You are now listening to the Bayshore Community Church podcast. Our mission is to connect to God, connect to people, and to serve the community. Thank you for joining us today, and wherever you are listening, we hope that this message inspires you, encourages you, and transforms you. Our prayer is that this is just the beginning of a conversation between you and Jesus. Enjoy the message.
Well, Bayshore! Woo! Good morning. Thanks for showing up. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. See, I knew we had some Sunday school people in the room. Listen, I went to way more Sunday school than all you all put together. I promise you, I know all the songs, I know all the Sunday school dance moves, and I would show you all, but some of you are here for the first time. And if I start singing and dancing up here, it will be your last time, all right? So we'd all be offended. But hey, if this is your first time in the basement today, maybe you're watching online from your basement today, maybe you're a regular and you've sat in the same seat the last 736 times that you have been here, all right? But I'm psyched you're here, and if you're glad to be here, and if you're just glad that you showed up to church, give yourself a hand that you did that. Man, I'm glad y'all are here, and this morning I was using our restroom over here, and I heard the band rehearsing. And I was like, how am I hearing the band rehearsing? I'm in the restroom, and I looked, and there's a speaker. There's a speaker of what's going on. I am in the bathroom right now. So we always shout out our online family. I thought we'd shout out our bathroom family this morning, all right? So there's some people in there right now hearing us, so just give them a hand. Like, root for them. Whoa, whoa, you got it. You guys root for anything. Hey, next weekend is the baptism party. You got to show up. If you do not show up, you're going to see pictures online and you're going to have FOMO, all right? You're going to miss out your shirt. You're going to miss out on celebrating people getting their life changed. You're going to miss out on ice cream that's free. I will do anything that's free. So do not miss next weekend or you will have FOMO. Everybody say FOMO. FOMO. All right, who's over 40 in the room? Raise your hand if you're over 40. Find the youngest person around you and say, what is the FOMO? Hey, today's it for this series that we're in called I'm Offended, which it's good that it's it. Because I've offended all of us like too much so far, all right? So, my goal was not to offend you all today, but I probably will, all right? And so right out of the gate, I want to find out who the godly people are in church today. And so I'm going to give you all a shot at this. Even Bing and Bo Dukes. We'll give these guys a shot at this, okay? And so here's what I want everybody to do, all right? I need everybody to raise your hand, okay? Front row people, back row, Kiki. Even people who like walked in and like, I ain't going to do nothing that pastor says today. Raise your hand. Or security's going to get you or something. I don't know. Okay. We're going to find out from a process of elimination who the godly people are in the room. All right, so I'm going to say some things, and you have to put your hands down if you fall into certain categories, and whoever has their hand up at the end, they're the godly people in the room. All right. First off, if you're a Steelers fan, put your hand down. See, they're standing up now. Like, listen, it's my game. Hands down, Steelers fans. If you've ever talked during a movie, well, let's not say ever. If you regularly talk during a movie, my wife, put your hand down. Put your hand down. If you have fed a seagull in the last decade, even if it was a little teeny fry, put your hand down and get out of church, all right? No, I'm just kidding, but knock it off, all right? All right. If you order your steak well done, hands down, you heathen. Okay. Yeah, they're fighting over here. Put your hand down, obviously. If you've already bought a Christmas present for this year, put your hand down, you psychopath. Okay, we got some hands up, both the hands up still, Rob, okay, all right. I'm going to give you a chance for some of you to re-raise your hand. If you own a dog, you can re-raise your hand. If you own a dog, there you go, dog people. All right. All the cat people are like, well, what about me? Okay, if you own a cat, put your hand down. Actually, that was the entire point of this game. I just wanted to say the people who own a dog are godly people, all right? So if you have your hand up, you're godly people. Woo! All the cat people are offended. See, I told you I offended some of the day. So if you own a dog, listen, I own a dog. My dog is 14 now. We got a picture we'll put up. This is Eli. Now, some of you are going to think I'm joking, but Eli's 14 now, and he can't hear anymore. I'm not even a joke. How is it possible? My dog has 2 mid-sized sedan ears, and he can't hear anymore. Anyway, speaking of mid-sized sedans and dogs, I've seen some people walking their large dogs, and I've seen those large dogs drop some mid-sized sedans for their owners to pick up. Who knows what I'm talking about? Now, my dog, he drops a little Prius. But I'm going to be honest with you. Even after owning my dog for 14 years, I have still not gotten used to picking up and walking around with a dog poo bag. Is anybody with me? You're just not, it's just abnormal? Nobody's with me. You're all like, you like picking, okay, I got you. You can come pick my dogs up. Okay, listen. I don't know how to walk through my neighborhood carrying this around. Like, I'm like. Now, some of you think this is like a Dolce & Gabbana purse. You're like, woo, got my bag. It's new, it's hot, what? Stop it. Some of you went there. I don't really know how to handle this, but I do know that my office in my house is on the front side of our house, and so I get to see all the dog walkers walk by in front of my house, picking up after their dog, strutting their Dolce & Gabbana bags in front of my house. And so earlier this summer, I was sitting in my office working, and the sweetest neighbor on our road, she walked by. She's a little Prius-sized dog, and so their Prius-sized dog dropped a little Prius-sized blessing. And so I'm sitting in front of my office, I'm looking, and you know what I'm doing. I'm watching to see, like, what's she going to do? Is she going to leave it? Or is she going to like Dolce & Gabbana strut with the bag? Is she going to pick it up? And so I'm watching. And so from my office, it looks like she reached down and put it in the bag or whatever. And then, this is where things get crazy. I see her go like this. And it went in my neighbor's tree. I was like, oh, we got some drama in the neighborhood. Woo! And so when Stacy came home, I'm like, oh, babe, you're not going to believe what I saw today. I saw, our sweet neighbor, she threw a dog poo bag in the neighbor's tree. And Stacy's like, nah. I'm like, uh-huh. Stacy's like, nah. I'm like, uh-huh. And I was like, hey, and she said, did you see it right? I'm like, have I ever been wrong in my life? Let me rephrase that. Yeah, I saw it right. Now, my wife, her life motto is trust but verify. She lives her life by trust but verify. So she was like, honey, I trust you, but I'm going to need to verify that this is in the tree. I'm like, let's go, babe. And so we walked out. We're those neighbors. We walk out our front of our house. We go across, and I start pointing where I thought the bag landed in the tree. I'm like, it's right over there. And I'm pointing, and Stacy's looking, and I'm looking, and Stacy's looking, and she's like, I don't see a poo bag up in the tree where you're pointing. I just see a stick where you say the poo bag is. And I looked, and all I saw was a stick. And apparently, I'm getting old because my neighbor didn't throw a poo bag in the neighbor's tree. She threw a stick in the neighbor's tree. Now, the next question might be why? I don't know why. But I do know that I thought I was right, but I wasn't as right as I thought I was. Which is why I'm calling today's message, You're Not as Right as You Think You Are. Now, I'm going to be honest. I think this title is a little weird. I'm a little offended by my own title. And the reason is simple. I think I'm right most of the time. Who's with me? Who thinks we're the right people in church today? Let me see your hands if you think you're right most of the time. The rest of you are liars, all right? Listen, I'm going to show you. I'm going to put some statements on the screen, and if you kind of sort of deep down believe these statements, you have to raise your hand, okay? Now, before we do this, there's one rule to this game. You cannot give a church answer. You can't go I'm humble because Miss Patsy's in the room. You can't lie in church. All right, so raise your hand if you kind of sort of deep down believe some of these statements. We'll put this up there. I'm right most of the time. I can easily spot someone else who isn't right. And I'm probably the best driver I know because I know the right way to drive. Raise your hand. Come on. Everybody raise your hand. Keep your hand up and look around. This explains all the world's problems right here. Look. Yeah, we're all right. We think we're right. Listen, I don't know about you. Well, I do know you think you're right too, but I think I know the right way to drive. I think I know the right way to get to where we are driving. Hello. I know the right way to believe. I know the right way to act. I know the right way that you should spend your money. I know the right way to parent. I know the right way to vote. I even know the right way to put the toilet paper on the toilet paper holder. Toilet paper on the outside. Praise the Lord. Listen, I'm so right. I go to the right church, obviously. I know the right answer on all the hot button issues. All right, I use the right kind of phone, which would be an iPhone. Glory to God. If you have an Android, you ain't going to heaven. And I root for the right football team, which would be the... It's always the Eagles fans, every single time. Listen, Eagles fans, you're not as right as you think you are, all right? So... But guys, is it okay if I go into sarcasm mode for just a second? If that's okay, just say, it's okay. Okay. Guys, it's exhausting being so right all the time in a world full of so many dumb people. Some of you are like, that's not sarcasm, that's my life motto, all right? All right, sarcasm mode off, all right? But what if, this is crazy, but what if we're not as right as we think we are? Yeah, listen, what if you could be right, but there's a right and a wrong way to be right? I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jesus. One day Jesus told a story. And he told a story about two people, a Pharisee and a tax collector. Everybody say a Pharisee, and a tax collector. The Pharisee was right. The tax collector was wrong. The Pharisee followed over 600 laws pretty much perfectly. The Pharisee had memorized the first 5 books of the Bible entirely by age 12. Hello. The tax collector was ripping off little old ladies. So the Pharisee was right. Everybody say he's right. The tax collector was wrong. Everybody say he's wrong. Now check out this story and get ready to be offended. All right, so Luke chapter 18, starting at verse 9. I'm going to read one of the Bibles that we have in the lobby, by the way. If you don't own a Bible, you get a free one today. So out in the lobby, these are out there. You can just grab one. You don't even have to talk to anybody. Just grab a Bible, act like you're stealing it, and won't run out of here. Nobody's going to chase you down. All right. Then Jesus told this story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. Oh, no. 2 men went to the temple or the church to pray. One was a what? Right. The other was a despised tax collector. Wrong. All right. The Pharisee stood by himself and he prayed this prayer. I thank you, God, that I am not like those other people, if you were here 2 weeks ago. Cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I am certainly not like that tax collector. Point him out. I fast twice a week, and I give 1/10 of my income, and I'm also maybe an Eagles fan, so I think I'm so right. We are. See, we are. See, they think. But the tax collector stood at a distance in church, and he dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed. Instead, he beat his own chest in sorrow, saying, "Oh God, be merciful to me, for I am a sinner." In other words, I am wrong. Now, Jesus is going to give a breakdown of what he thinks about this story. Jesus says, I tell you, the sinner, the wrong person, not the Pharisee, the right person, returned home justified before God. I read that wrong. The sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before what? For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Jesus is like, mic drop, Jesus zing. All right, like this is crazy. Everybody say, oh snap. Oh, snap. That's what this story is. This is an oh snap story. Because guys, the Pharisee's like, I'm right. And the other guy's wrong. And the Pharisee is kind of right. But don't miss this. To Jesus, it's not just about right and wrong. It's also about pride and humility. Because it's hard to be right and loving at the same time. Now, I can't speak for you all right? But when I think I'm right all the time, which I kind of do, offenses just kind of stick to me out of nowhere. Like I'm just walking around, then I get offended by different things because I kind of think I'm right all the time. And so let me give you an illustrative story of this. So in the summer, I run every morning at 5:30 a.m. Hashtag humble brag. Just taking care of the temple, people. Anyway. So I normally run down the road, but last week I took a different route than I ever take at 5:30 in the morning. I ran through this trail in the woods, which is near my house. Now, I don't normally run through the trail in the woods because it's dark. And I don't know if you, I don't know how you are, but I don't want to be in the woods in the dark. Is anybody with me? No. Some of you want to be in the woods in the dark. Wrong, all right? So I don't want to be in the woods in the dark because, listen, I'm not worried about Bigfoot at any point in my life, typically. But if I'm in the woods in the dark running, I am running from Bigfoot. You know what I'm saying? And so all of a sudden, I'm running through the woods. It's completely dark. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I'm praying oh Lord, keep me safe from Bigfoot and Sasquatch and Nessie and whoever, whatever. And so I didn't run into Bigfoot, but I did run into the biggest spider web you have ever seen. Listen, I think Spider-Man himself made this spider web. And I was just running along kind of perfectly normal. And all of a sudden it was ah! You ever run into a spider web out of nowhere? I'm just trying to pick it off and for the rest of the day it was on me. I think we have a picture of me talking to Stacy at dinner time. This is me. It was stuck to me. I couldn't get the cobwebs off me, the spider webs off of me. And I think that's what happens when we go through life thinking, I'm right all the time. Things just out of nowhere get stuck to us. Offenses kind of just get stuck to us, and we can't get them off. It's like me running through the woods. We're going through life, and all of a sudden, we get offended because, do you know who they voted for? Did you hear what she said? Can you believe that they posted that on Facebook or Snapchat, depending on your age? Or can you believe what she's wearing in church? Oh my goodness, husband, look at what, can you believe what she's wearing? Don't look at her, but look. And when you are stuck thinking you're right all the time, being offended just kind of sticks to us. And you might say, well, but Pastor Joel, I'm just opinionated. That's how God made me. And listen, the problem with that mentality of I'm right all the time, I'm just opinionated all the time is eventually you'll stop hating what that person is doing and you'll start hating who that person is. Oh man, I am preaching today. Must be because the Ravens are playing at 1, all right? I don't know. But eventually, when you're right all the time, you'll stop hating what that person is doing and you'll start hating who that person is. And we'll put this on the screen. Jesus' goal for us was never to be more right than we are loving. His goal for us was never to be more right than we are loving. Now, maybe you're like, well, Pastor Joel, Sunday school, Pastor Joel, this little light of mine, Pastor Joel, I like to shout that I'm right to all the wrong people because that is my witness, Pastor Joel. I like to share Jesus that way, Pastor Joel, because I'm Holy Hank. That was kind of fun. I felt dramatic doing that. Well, listen, is that the best way to share Jesus with people? All right, I'm going to try Holy Hank's approach for just a second. Can I do that? Is that okay? Now, I normally tell you what I do wrong. Isn't it true that most of the time I just tell you how jacked up I am? Is that true? Yeah, that's why some of you come to this church. You're like, you're the only pastor I behave better than. You're welcome, all right? But for a second, I'm not going to tell you how jacked up I am or how messed up I am. I'm going to tell you how amazing I am. I'm going to tell you about Holy Joel. Are you ready for Holy Joel? Okay, here comes Holy Joel. This is Holy Joel. I was a virgin when I got married. Holy Joel. I am so righteous that I have never been to a club. And if I did go to a club and dance, they would probably shut the club down. I have never been high. I am so righteous, I have never been high, except during and after surgery. At which point, the last time I had surgery, I was apparently very handsy with my wife after surgery. But I don't remember because I was legal high, all right? But I am so amazing that I don't cuss or smoke or go more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. I pay off our credit card every single month. I am so righteous that me and my hot boo thing right here, we tithe 10% of everything that comes in, and sometimes we give even more than that. Praise the Lord for us. I read my Bible cover to cover more times than I can even count. And I work out 4 to 5 times a week and eat salads and avocados most days. I am so holy, I glow in the dark. That last part was sarcasm. The rest is true. Now, quick question. How many of you heard that and were like, oh my gosh, I just want to follow Jesus more. Holy Joe, I just want to follow Jesus more after hearing that. No. How many of you just went, anybody just go like, look, I did, and it was about me. And before you get mad at me for how perfect I just made myself sound, I skipped 2 workouts this week. I sped through Dewey last night. And, the other thing is, my favorite part of the halftime show at the Super Bowl last year was definitely Snoop Dogg. Da-na-na-na-na. Okay. So, thank you, Bo Dukes. Well, listen, I don't want to offend any of you Sunday school people because I am you. But people aren't drawn to Jesus because of our moral superiority. Nobody has ever run into this church saying, oh my goodness, tell me about Jesus. Because my coworker, his name is Holy Hank, he didn't watch Breaking Bad because he said it was full of filth. And he doesn't cuss or smoke or hang out with people who do, so I need to know about this Jesus. That's never happened. That's never happened. People aren't drawn to Jesus because of how right you are. People are drawn to Jesus because of how loved you make them feel. Let me say that again. People aren't drawn to Jesus because of how right you are. They're drawn to Jesus because of how loved you make them feel. Now, I know some of you are like, oh, here we go. With that, soft, millennial, new age Jesus. My Jesus was tough. My Jesus had a whip. He made out of a cowhide, out of a cow. He butchered himself, ate the meat raw. He had a stallion, took diesel gas. He had a picture of Chuck Norris in his wallet, hashtag America Jesus. I waited all week to say that. That was probably my favorite part of this whole message. Anyway, listen, I will admit that Jesus was tough at times, but Jesus, I call him tough with a towel, Jesus. Let me explain what I mean. One day, Jesus was having dinner with his boys, his fellows, his best friends. And it was the day before Jesus was arrested and executed. We call it the Last Supper. You all heard of the Last Supper, right? And so for the Last Supper, they weren't sitting in chairs. They were sitting on the ground. And I just imagine Jesus is about to take like a big old bite of hummus, for the Last Supper. And he's sitting there all sitting, legs crossed or whatever. And Jesus is about to eat his hummus. And he's like, your all feet stink. Like stanky. Like, Peter, I'm trying to eat hummus, and you look like you got hummus in between your toes, man. It's stinky up in here. And so what did Jesus do? Tough Jesus picked up a towel. And he started at the Last Supper washing every one of those 12 guys' stanky feet. And they stank. Listen, those feet, they wore open-toed shoes. This is not open-heel shoes. These are not Birkenstocks. Open-toed shoes. There was hummus everywhere, right? Just like toe jam. Jesus cleaned 24 man feet. And then Jesus told them this. It says this in John 13, 33 through 35. Jesus says, "Dear children," talking to his 12 best friends, "I will be with you only a little while longer." In fact, 24 hours later, he was executed. "So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other." Now, did he say, share how right you are with people? He said, love each other, just as I have loved you. And Peter, you know I love you because I just cleaned all the hummus out between your toes. So just I have shown you love. I want you to love each other. And then, don't miss this, Jesus says, your love for one another will what? Will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Your love is what will prove to the world. And you might be like, well, how are we going to share Jesus with people? Well, we got to show them that we're right and they're wrong. And I'll make a Facebook post about how right I am and how wrong they are. And Jesus is like, no. Because people aren't drawn to Jesus by how right you are. People are drawn to Jesus by how loved you make them feel. And think about who's at the table with Jesus. You have hummus toe Peter. Some of you aren't there yet. Everybody say hummus toe Peter. He had to have his feet cleaned. I mean, they were nasty. Anyway, hummus toe Peter was there. The next day, Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times and cussed out a little girl. At that table was Matthew the tax collector. Matthew the tax collector was so bad, even like people who were mean to little puppies were like, oh, Matthew, he's jacked up. Judas was at the table. The Judas. Did you know Jesus washed the Judas's feet right before his execution? Can we agree these are not morally superior people? Yes or no? Yes. They are not morally superior people, but they love being around Jesus. Why? The answer is simple. Jesus didn't make them feel wrong. He made them feel love. He made them feel loved. And so maybe, just maybe, that's the better way than just being right all the time. And you might be like, well, Joe, I'm still right, and I rock Birkenstocks, and my feet don't stink, and all that stuff. But listen, being right can set off the wrong chain reaction. I'm going to show you an example. And could you put up that slide? It starts with I'm right. Okay, so I'm going to explain this slide by talking about steak. Come on, who likes some steak? Anybody like some steak in here? Woo! All right, I love some steak. And maybe you don't do steak. Maybe you don't do red meat because you read an article or something, and maybe you're vegan, you do tofu. Listen, you do you. I am not going to offend you. You eat all the tofu because I can eat all the steak. Come on, somebody. I love steak. And I don't want to brag. Kind of I do. I make a really darn good steak. I think I can make a steak better than most restaurants around here. Now, I'm not sure about 1776 over here. I've only been there one time. And I'd like to go more. And I'd like to just share right now that Pastor's Appreciation Month is in October. My birthday is December 1st, and Christmas is in December also this year. So if you get me a gift card, I will do some research about their steak and get back to you to see who makes the better steak. But listen, I kind of think I know the right way to make a steak because I watched a lot of YouTube videos, you guys. And so I cook it in my cast iron skillet. I put some, oil in there. I put some butter in there. I put unbelievable amounts of garlic in there. I have this secret seasoning that I put in there. And I sear both sides so much that we set off all the smoke detectors in our house. Glory to God. And then at the very end of the cook, all that buttery stuff that's supposed to kill you, I get a spoon. And I just put it all back on the steak. Just get in there. Come on, somebody. Just get in there. And then I let the meat rest. And then after it rests, I cut it in little slivers so Stacy can see that I cooked it perfectly medium rare. And she can be like, oh, honey, it's so perfect. And I'd be like, I know. I feel like I am right. And I feel superior about my steak making abilities. Until about a year ago, Bo Stinkin' Dukes said to me, I can make the best steak. He's like, I will cook you the best steak you have ever had in your life. And I thought, well, that's not possible. Because I make the best steak that I have ever had in my life. And I felt a little offended about his comment and his, I was judging him and his steak. And then he said, I want to come to your house and cook you a steak. And I wasn't even going to let him come to my house and cook me a steak. But he said, I will pay for the steak. And I said, you can come over. So Bo, listen, he brought his own grill when he showed up. I'm like, that seems unnecessary. He cooked half the steak on his grill, and then he put for the other half of the cook, he put it in a butter bath, and he cooked it off in my oven to a perfect inside temperature of like 133.7 degrees or something, because he also brought his little thermometer, unnecessary. And then, to put on the steak top, there was bacon chutney. I'm like, there's bacon chutney? And then I took a bite, and I went to the seventh layer of heaven, okay? Bo Dukes is the goat when it comes to steaks. Like, it was unbelievable. And I don't want to talk to you about steaks in the lobby. I'm still offended by the whole situation. But don't miss this. I thought I know how to make the right steak, and I felt superior about my steak. And then I was judgmental when Bo was like, I can make a really good steak. And now I'm just offended by the whole situation because he made the better steak. And when we think that we're right all the time, we go through this same cycle. I'm right, we feel superior, we become judgmental, and then we're easily offended. And so like maybe you're in your marriage, you think you're right. Who else is right in their marriage other than me? Yeah, some of you are not playing around. Listen, I'm right. You can ask Stacy. Yesterday I was so right and I was so wrong. But we think, I'm right in our marriage, and so we feel superior because And, I've been, judging her since 1976 when the issue happened, and then she told me on Tuesday I can't wear my white jeans because it's after Labor Day, and I'm offended. But look, we went from I'm right, I feel superior, become judgmental, easily offended. The feeling right set out the wrong chain reaction. And so that's what happened. Anybody else have ever gone through this cycle right here? Now, quick question. How many of you would say that you guess, kind of, sort of, Jesus was more right than you? How many would you say that? People in the back? Okay, good. Most everybody thinks Jesus was more right than you. This is wild. We'll put this on the screen. Jesus was the most right person who ever lived, and Jesus was also the least judgmental person who ever lived. He was the most right person who ever lived, and he was the least judgmental person who ever lived. I'm going to show you. On week 1, I told the story about that woman who got caught with a man who wasn't her husband. And they were not sharing banana bread recipes. They were reenacting an Ed Sheeran music video, all right? So she gets caught by Pharisees who are right, and is she wrong with what she's doing? Yes or no? Yes. And so she gets caught. And so they drag her out in the street. The Pharisees drag this woman who's been caught, having an affair. And so they're all mad. And so they all picked up. What do you guys think was in here? I have a rock here. They all picked up rocks, and they're like, you're wrong, and we're right, and they're going to stone her. And guess who shows up? Jesus. Dun, dun, dun. And Jesus stands in between wrong her and right them. And Jesus said, if you're perfect, go ahead and throw the stone at her. Whoo, that's a Jesus thing. That's a mic drop right there. Now, question, and this is not a trick question. This is a layup. Who is the only person there that could actually have thrown a stone at that woman? Jesus. And Jesus was the only one who didn't even pick up a stone. Why? Because Jesus was the most right person who ever lived, and Jesus was also the least judgmental person who ever lived. And so he loved her more than he loved being right. Because it's not just about right and wrong, it's about pride and humility. Could you guys put that slide back up there, the I'm wrong, or I'm right slide? Okay. By the way, can we give it up for the people in the back? These guys, these volunteers. They make it happen. I love those guys. They also would enjoy 1776 gift cards. But when we think we're right, we feel superior, we become judgmental, we're easily offended. But when we have humility, if you could put up that next slide, our perspective is, I'm forgiven, So I feel grateful. And then when you feel grateful, you become more accepting of others, even when they're wrong. And then you find it easier to love other people. When our perspective, when we're humble, when we say, hey, I'm forgiven, we feel grateful, we become more accepting, and we find other people easier to love even when they're wrong. And that's good because people don't change because we judge them. People change because we love them. I'm going to end by telling you a story that may offend some of you all, but that's sort of my spiritual gift, right? All the Steelers fans and Cat people are like, we know. Now, I've told this story before, so some of you have heard this, but I started preaching down here 9 years ago. I became a pastor 9 years ago. I became a professional Christian 9 years ago. I'm a pro, guys. Listen, I don't know what I'm doing now, 9 years later. That first year, I definitely didn't know what I was doing, especially when it came to preaching. Like, after the service, Stacey would be like, your message today was, well, what were you trying to say up there? I call my first year the BC days, the before compliments days. I got a lot of comments, but not any compliments. Okay, so people will be walking out and be like, today's message was real interesting, Pastor. I'm like, thanks. Will I see you next week? No, you never come back? Okay, great. BC days. And so in one of the BC days, I was up here talking about who knows what. I was just glad my wife showed up to church that day, and I was talking. And then we had a guy in our church named Don. And Don had about 736 tattoos. Half his head was shaved. The other half was a party. Don was a loud talker. Anybody know any loud talkers? Don't point, but yeah, some of you know. Yeah, Don was a loud talker. And I love Don. And the reason I love Don is because one Sunday I was up here preaching, like I said, and after the service, I went out in the lobby, and loud talker Don said to me, he was like, Pastor, that was the best beep message I have ever heard. And everybody heard him because Don was a loud talker. And listen, that lobby has never been quiet except when Don said that. Everybody got quiet. Man, you could have heard a mouse toot up in there. It was a shh. Then people started whispering like, can't believe he cussed in the church. I do my cussing out in the parking lot, but never in the church. The whole lobby is looking at me like, what are you going to do now, Pastor Joel? Because he's like, And so I was like, Don, that's the best beep compliment I've ever gotten. No, just kidding. I didn't say that. All right, but I thought about it. I was so excited. It was like my first compliment. I was like, Don, man, thank you. That's like the best compliment I've ever gotten. It's probably the only compliment I've ever gotten. And I hugged Don out there in the lobby. And you might say, well, he was wrong. He can't be cussing in church. Listen, Jesus didn't say people will know him by how we correct people's language. He said people will know me by how you love. And that day out in the lobby, I hugged cussing crazy Don. And Don, until he moved away a few years ago, was in our church like every single Sunday, because it's not just about right and wrong. It's also about pride and humility. And so maybe you're like me. I think I'm right most of the time. I know the right way to drive. I know the right way to drive to get where I'm going. I know the right way to believe. I know the right way to act. I know the right way to parent. I know the right way to handle money. I know the right way to vote. I know the right way to put the toilet paper on the toilet paper holder. It's so exhausting being right all the time in a world full of so many dumb people. But what if I'm not as right as I think I am? What if you're not as right as you think you are? What if we are not as right as we think we are? What if it's not just about right and wrong? What if it's also about pride and humility? What if Jesus didn't say anything about right or wrong in that new commandment because he didn't want us to ever be more right than we were loving? I'm sort of offended by all that. And maybe you are too. But maybe we're not as right as we think we are. Maybe love is the better way. Maybe the great theologian, Paul McCartney, all the boomers are like, that's my era. But maybe all you need is love. And so I thought I'd end this whole series not talking about, offense, but instead I would just read some of the greatest love chapter in the Bible, 1 Corinthians 13. And if you've ever been to a wedding or Sunday school, you know this. All right, so Listen to this. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, in other words, if I'm right, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and knowledge and have faith that can move mountains because I'm right, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast how right I am, but do not have love, I gain nothing. So church, is it better to be right or loving? Come on, I need to hear everybody, even in the back. Is it better to be right or loving? Loving. Let's be loving this week. Let me pray for you guys. Jesus, oh man, I feel right so many times and I'm wrong so many times. And God, sometimes I am right, but I handle being right the wrong way. So God, I just pray that you'll just remind us that it's not just about right and wrong, it's about pride and humility. And so when we walk out of here, help us to just realize that we're forgiven. And so that makes us feel grateful. And then we become less judgmental to other people and we become more loving to them, even when they might be wrong. And so God, I pray that we will not go into the wrong cycle where we, think we're right and we get mad and all that stuff. But God, I just pray that you'll help remind us that when that woman was wrong, when she was with that man who wasn't her husband, you stood between her and the people who were right. And you said to the people who were right, you can't really throw a stone because you're not always right either. Help us to realize that we're not always right either. But you, Jesus, are always right. And so we can follow you. And you give us grace, you forgive us, and because we're forgiven, we can show some grace to some other people. And so, God, I know that's hard, but God, help us to do this in our marriages. Help us to do this at work. Help us to do this with our friendships. Help us to do this when we're browsing online on social media, God. Help us not to just shout that we're right. Help us to also show love, because love is how people will know who you are. Jesus, I know you're working on all of us. You're working on me. And so, God, I just pray that you'll help me with all these things. And dear Lord, I pray for the Ravens today, and I pray that the Jets will lose. Because the Ravens are your team. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Bayshore podcast. I want to encourage you to take this message you just received and allow it to go deep into your soul and let Jesus do the deep work that only he can do. A special thanks to everyone that gives generously to Bayshore. It's because of you that this ministry is possible, creating life change all over the world. You can be a part of spreading the message around the world by going to bayshore.online and clicking Give. For all things Bayshore, visit bayshore.online to find out what your next step may be. You can subscribe right here and share this podcast with your friends and family. Thank you again for listening. God bless you.